I've been lucky enough to get into the Delta Force Hawk Ops technical test, and I've played it for about 5 hours now. I went into this super skeptical. I didn't really like the trailers. I didn't really think it sounded that good from what I'd heard about the game, but it's amazing. I'm absolutely loving it. In this video, I'm going to give you my honest impressions, both the good and the bad things, because there are some things that I don't love about it. But I'm going to let you know everything I think about it and why I think for people who were big fans of DMZ and were sad to see that go, this could be the next big game you should be interested in. It's worth mentioning this is a technical test. They originally didn't really want anyone to be sharing content from this, but then they changed their mind at some point. There are unfinished features, there's bugs and optimization problems and stuff like that. To be honest, my game time with it has been super solid. I haven't had any crashes or disconnects or anything like that, but I just wanted to make it clear, this is just a technical test. It will be better even in the more public alpha, I think it is, that's starting on 18th, so in about a week's time. And of course, I'll be making more content on the game then as well. So what is the game? It's a first-person shooter and it comes with 3 modes. It's free to play, by the way, so you'll be able to play it when it comes out properly, absolutely for free, and you can play it on Xbox and on PlayStation and on PC. I think there's even a mobile version of it, although I'm not sure if that's exactly the same game, but still, it's basically available on everything, and it has 3 modes. So the main mode that I'm going to be talking about is Hazard Operations. That's the sort of extraction shooter that's like DMZ. They also have something called Havoc Warfare that's more like Battlefield. There's like vehicles and stuff, big map, sort of team deathmatch or conquest type stuff going on. I haven't actually played that mode yet. And then there's also going to be a campaign based on the Black Hawk Down sort of storyline, I think. I'm not sure if they're basing it more on like the movie. I feel like I've heard something about that, or whether it's going to be based on the old Delta Force game that went through that story. But anyway, those are the 3 modes. Essentially, it's campaign, extraction mode, and then a sort of conquesty, deathmatchy type mode as well, if you want some more instant action. Although it does share a name with the old Delta Force games, that's about all it shares, to be honest. I'm old enough to remember the first Delta Force on PC and being amazed by its use of, I think it was like voxel tech, where you could have these big open maps with like hills and stuff, and you could take a sniper rifle in and kill enemies from ages away, so you'd be taking out bases full of enemies without any of them even knowing you were there. It felt amazing at the time, super tactical, super strategic, didn't feel anything like this game at all. I really enjoyed that old game. This one doesn't feel like that. I know there have been more Delta Force games since then, so maybe this one's a bit more similar to them, but it's definitely nothing like the original Delta Force at all. It seems a bit like maybe they're just kind of using the name. It is a cool name after all. This one is much more like a kind of Call of Duty take on an extraction shooter. Again, you know, a bit like DMZ, but just with some more elements of games like Escape from Tarkov or Grey Zone Warfare. So Hazard Operations is the mode I'm going to be focusing on for this video, and the way it works is going to be super familiar to anyone who's played an extraction shooter before. You pick some missions from various vendors. They start off super simple, like kill 5 enemies, and then they get more complex, where they're asking you to find items or kill bosses and things like that. And then you go into your stash and you build a loadout. You can either use the stash stuff that you've got, or you can buy new stuff, and you can actually use a gunsmith and stuff like that. I'll show you a little bit later. And then once you've got your loadout sorted, what you want to take into the mission, you can group up with friends. You can get into a party of up to 3 players, I think, or you can just get match made with randoms. And then you choose a map to load into to go and complete the missions. Some of the missions you can do on any map. Some of the missions you have to do on specific maps. Right now, there's only 1 map available in the test. It's this big dam. I think it's called like Zero Dam. There will be a new one tonight. I think it's coming out at 1 AM in the UK, which isn't a great time for me, but I'll definitely do some content on that tomorrow. And then it looks like on the menu, maybe there's space for about 4 or 5 of these maps. I'm guessing they'll add more over time. Once you get into the map, you're going to run around with your team. You're going to be fighting AI. There's a bunch of AI guards. And while they're kind of slow, if they do start shooting at you, they can be super dangerous. All the guns seem to do the same amount of damage. So if an AI manages to shoot you in the head with a gun, it's still going to knock you down. There's some bosses. I've come across one boss once, and it lasted about 5 seconds before he shredded me to pieces. And I quite like that difficulty. You might talk about that a bit more later. You can also fight players. Obviously, there's going to be other teams of players doing the same thing. I'm not sure how many players. In my most kind of successful raid so far, I killed 12 players, so that's 4 other teams. I'm not sure if my teammates had killed anyone in that game, but that implies, yeah, there's at least 5 teams on a map, And the maps aren't huge. They're probably like, I don't know, maybe like a fifth the size of Al Masr in DMZ. They seem to have like 3 big areas, like 3 big points of interest, and then not much space between them. There's not much open ground at all. And then you can also do some like extra little missions that are like contracts that you can pick up in the game. So you'll pick up something that will be like, hey, go to this area and clear out all of the enemies. And then you get some special credits that you get just for that game. And you can also go loot stuff, so you can get stuff off the enemies that you kill, the other players that you kill, or you can open up safes and things like that. And it actually shows you where all the safes are when you load into the game. So you can just like make a beeline for a safe to try and get some good loot. And then you can try and extract. And there's a few different ways to extract. There's like a safe extraction that everyone can use for free, but obviously that one might be a bit busier. Then there's normally one where you can like activate something around the map to open up an extraction. So on the dam, there's some levers you can pull. That summons an elevator down the dam, but it also sets off an alarm. It tells everyone on the map what you're doing. And from when you pull the levers, you only have like 3 minutes to get to that elevator, so you're gonna have to do like a mad rush to get over there when everyone knows what you're doing, so it's kind of inherently risky. And then there's also some safer extractions, but you have to pay for those using the money, the credits that you get from those contracts that you do in game. So there's kind of different methods of extracting, which is kind of interesting. When you actually extract, it's not that interesting. It's just kind of a timer counts down and then it plays a cutscene. You just disappear out of the game. You just like teleport out of the map. You don't need to get onto a helicopter or anything like that, which I thought was pretty cool in DMZ, so it's a little bit of a shame that you don't have that. So let's start with the positives. Is it any good? Yes. Video over. No, I mean, it's a really good game. It's really solid. Like I said, it surprised me. I went into this game super skeptical. Like, I'd seen those trailers and all I could think was, this doesn't look like a Delta Force game. This isn't what I expected. I expected it to be like a tactical shooter, and instead it looks like this weird arcadey hero shooter. And it kind of is that. You do play as different operators and they all have their own abilities, but to be honest, the abilities are pretty fun. I've been enjoying them. Like, one character has this kind of syringe injector, and they can shoot other players with like homing darts that will heal them, or they can shoot it for themselves. And they have this kind of cool ability where they throw down some smoke, and then if they shoot their healing gun into the smoke, it heals everyone in the smoke, so you can heal an entire team like that. There's some cool stuff like that I think is really clever and really interesting. And then there's another character that can make themselves run super fast. There's a character that can fire an arrow that sort of pings a little kind of wall hack thing in a sphere, so you can shoot into a room and then see where all the enemies are. Stuff like that, that I guess some of it might not be balanced very well at the moment. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that seems super powerful, but I'd kind of prefer them to err on the side of making things that are super powerful, that then, you know, we can have some fun with them, and then maybe try and, if the others aren't as good, if people are just picking one of them, try to boost some of the others up. I always think that's more interesting with an arcadey game than if they just nerf everything. But the abilities are fun. Like, I've had a good time with them. I've enjoyed using them. They are very silly. They're not very realistic at all, but I don't really care about that too much. There's a lot else to like about the game as well. The gunplay feels really good. It's very similar to Call of Duty. They have complicated it a bit. I think Westy talked about in his video where he set it from TwitchCon, where he was saying about how it seems a bit weird that there's all different ammo types and different levels of armor and stuff like that. And I agree with him that that's complicated things more than it needs to be. It kind of is irritating thinking, oh, okay, that enemy's using lots of high-level armor and my ammo isn't good enough to get through that armor, so there's essentially no point in me shooting him. I'm not sure how much it really impacts it in game. Like, obviously, I've only played for 5 hours. I don't know what the highest level of armor is like when you're playing against a player using that. And the guns that I'm using, I'm just using whatever ammo I find, and it's all worked so far. So far, it's not been a problem. But I can imagine if there's a big difference between, like, the strongest armor and the weakest ammo, or, you know, the strongest ammo and the weakest armor, that could kind of suck. I have had a few times in game that I've been, like, absolutely one-shot, and that isn't a lot of fun. Only one time where it fully killed me, and that was a boss doing that with an LMG. But yeah, for an arcadey game, it does feel sometimes like the ammo type could make things a bit too complicated and maybe feel a little bit unfair. But I'm not sure. Maybe it'll be fine. So far, it's been okay. The movement feels really good. There's a weird sort of stamina thing where when you're sprinting, you have a stamina bar and it fills up again super slowly. Hopefully there'll be items or abilities or something that can make it so your stamina increases faster. I am wondering if it's tied to weight, because it does talk about weight a bit. So maybe if you're carrying less stuff, your stamina will increase faster. That would be fine if that's the case. I just haven't done enough experimentation. I tend to just pick up everything I possibly can. I'm like a loot goblin in this game. If someone kills me, they get absolutely everything. But yeah, so I'm probably always a bit overburdened, and maybe that's why my stamina bar takes so long. But when you are moving around, when you can sprint, you can slide, you can hop over stuff, it feels really good. It feels really, really smooth at the moment, and I think that's really good. Also, when you're shooting, there's a really good sense of feedback. Like, you're shooting people, you get the hit markers, it makes a satisfying sound. If you get a headshot, it makes a different sound. Comes up on a screen, it always feels good, even when you're just killing AI. And that's quite a hard thing to get right. Like, the movement and the shooting are probably the most important aspects of any FPS, and I always think if you can get them right, you get quite a lot of leeway with everything else about the game. You know, Call of Duty has survived for a very long time on having incredibly good shooting and movement mechanics, and then everything else, you know, sometimes good, sometimes bad, but we keep going back to Call of Duty because it's so satisfying to play. This to me feels like the most satisfying extraction shooter that I've played, you know, outside maybe DMZ. It has that really solid core to it, which is a really, really good thing. That means that hopefully they can build on everything else, and this will be something really exciting. You know, a lot of the time when you get these extraction games that come out of nowhere, they often feel quite janky. They often feel quite unsatisfying to use the guns, or the movement feels really clunky, but none of that in this. Another thing I really love about this game is the progression. So the progression is really cool. You do lots of missions, which you can do back at the base. You also have a physical base that you can walk around and explore, and you can upgrade it by getting different items and level it. You have to like level up and get a set of different items from inside the missions, and then you can go back to your base and you can like spend that to level up your base a bit, and it might give you like some more stash space or access to a different kind of mission or something like that. There's lots of little perks it can give you. I know DMZ did this with the challenges, where you could complete the challenges and get upgrades, but there's something nice about having a physical space that you can keep on developing and see it getting better. If you don't want to go around a physical space to interact with all the different vendors and stuff, absolutely fine, you can just do it in menus, that's not a problem, but it's like, it's there as a visual representation of what you're doing, you know, and you can think, oh, okay, this bit of my base is a bit neglected, I need to go into a mission to go get this stuff, so then I can upgrade that part. I think that's a fun type of progression. I think that's pretty cool. Like I said, there's also a bunch of missions. There seems to be tons and tons of challenges. There's a ranked mode. I'll be interested to see how that works with an extraction shooter. I don't think it's working the technical test. It just says something like no points available or something. But it'll be interesting if you can go into ranked and get ranked alongside everything else. And obviously, because it uses the stash system, where anything you take into the game, you can lose it if you die, and anything you get out of the game, you get to keep in your stash, means that that side of the progression is a bit more interesting as well. That, like, you know, if you have a really good mission, you get a load of good stuff, that makes your future missions easier. That refills your stash a little bit. And if you have a run of bad games, then it can get a little bit scary. You know, you start thinking, oh, okay, I'm going to take in this slightly terrible gun or this slightly terrible armor because it's all I've got left. I need to go into a mission and try and make some money or something like that, or find some good gear. That's something that DMZ never did. That's probably the biggest thing that DMZ never got right, was that gear fear of like losing all of your good stuff. Because in DMZ it was always like, oh, you just wait a little while and you'll be able to take a loadout weapon and take the best gun ever in again. You can't do that in this. You can buy guns and you can buy attachments to put on them using this gunsmith, but the attachments are insanely expensive. Like, I think one of the foregrips we looked at was $71,000, which is a lot of money in this game. After playing 5 hours, I was close to having $1 million. So, you know, I'd be able to buy, what's that, like 15 of those foregrips? That's not that much. When I died, the first time I died completely, which was right at the end of my stream, it came up with a thing that I'll talk about in a second. Hi, Editing Tom here. While I was editing this, I realized I didn't come back to this at all, so I'll explain it now. This game has an awesome system where when you've got your like perfect loadout sorted before you go on a mission, you can actually save that loadout. And then when you want to go into a mission in future, you can just press the button to load up that loadout, and if you've got the things in your stash, it will just drop them on, it will equip them straight away, and if you don't have some bits of it, it will show you how much it will cost to buy them. That's an absolutely awesome system. I wish other extraction shooters had that, because that's super cool. It saves so much time. I could see how much I'd lost, essentially, how much it would cost to put me back to where I was before. And it was about $250,000. So even after playing for 5 hours, I only had enough money to get what I'd bought 3 times. I'd only be able to get back to what I had originally had 3 times using that. So there is some real fear of losing your best stuff, and there's a really good sense of progression in terms of, okay, I'm slowly building this stash up of good weapons, good armor, I'm getting some good stuff out. And I really like that. I think that's a solid advantage this game has over DMZ. Another thing that I'm surprised that I like about this game, I thought it looked kind of bad when I first heard about it, but it's the auction house. So any items that you get in game, you can sell to other players on an auction house, just like in World of Warcraft or something. It's not a real money auction house like Diablo tried in Diablo 3. It's not NFTs or anything like that, you know, like games like Off the Grid and stuff like that are trying to do. Instead, it's all in-game, just using in-game currency. It will suggest a price for the item, but you can put it higher or lower than that if you want. And then whenever you're buying stuff, you can always choose, you know, do you want to buy it from a vendor or do you want to buy it from the auction house where it might be cheaper if it's like super common. This is really interesting because it means with really rare items like keycards, I've literally never seen a keycard. If you needed one for a mission, you remember how annoying it is in Grey Zone Warfare where there's a particular key you need and you just can't find it. With this, you could be like, okay, well, instead of finding it, I could just save up a load of money in game and then buy that key card. And people were selling them for a lot. They were selling them for like millions of credits. But yeah, it's a really interesting thing where sometimes you might get an item that you don't need because you've already done the mission. And then you're like, oh, well, it's okay because I can sell it and make a ton of money off it from people who are coming up and now doing the mission. I think that's pretty cool. It makes sort of getting loot a little bit more exciting. And yeah, I'm interested to see how that works with the whole sort of like a player-driven economy. It will be interesting to see whether things get insanely expensive or whether the number of people playing makes everything super cheap. Hopefully they control it a little bit. We'll see how it works. But let's talk about some of the things that I don't really like about the game so much, because there are some things that right now aren't so good. First of all, in, I would say, the first 5 games that I played, the first sort of 5 or so raids that I played, I didn't see another human player. I had 2 people who were meant to be human players on my team. I killed a load of people who the game told me were human players, but I'm 100% sure none of them were. Well, maybe not none of them. I'm 90% sure none of them were. You know, I was getting 12 kills per game, no problem. My bot companions were getting stuck running into corners and things like that. The enemies would just run out into the open. No one was running across and like looting anyone or anything like that. They just weren't behaving like real players at all. And the game doesn't tell you they're bots. There's no way to identify it. It even gives them like usernames with like TTV in and stuff like that to try and make you think they're real. And I think that's the thing that I don't like about it, is how it's a bit misleading. Because you could start playing this and think, I'm amazing at this game. Like, I'm getting loads of kills, I'm doing absolutely amazing. And then it's a bit deflating when you realize that these aren't real people, that you've just been fighting against bots the whole time. Now, weirdly, once you get past about, for me, it was like level 7, I started getting in games with real people. So suddenly, matchmaking times went from being a few seconds to a few minutes. I would get in games with real people. And whereas before, when I've been playing against bots, I would load into a game with 2 random bots and they would follow me around, they'd be healing me, they wouldn't be stealing the loot or anything like that. Immediately you get into games with real people and the 3 of you all walk off in different directions to do your different missions. If you get in a gunfight, one of your teammates will just immediately run over and start taking all of the loot before you've healed up or anything like that. It's a little bit of a nightmare. I'm sure it'd be a load of fun if you've got a team of 3 people to play with, you know. If you're a group of people, you've got other people to play with, it'll be loads of fun. But if you're playing with randoms, I kind of preferred having the bots, to be honest. They were at least healing me and stuff like that and not taking any loot. That was pretty cool. Playing with real people can be a bit of a nightmare. And you know, one guy, when he died really stupidly and then just kept pinging constantly for us to revive him. Little bit of a nightmare. Fighting against other players is obviously a bit more interesting, especially with everyone having loads of abilities and things like that. I thought the fights were really cool. Once I got into games against real players, you know, I rarely got into fights with other players. It was much more rare than when I was fighting against bots. I think the bots just like home in on you. But I killed a few players and it was a really good fight every time. You know, people using smoke grenades, people using positioning. The audio is super good at the moment in terms of you can hear people from a long way away. I'm not sure if they'll have to tweak it because sometimes it's a bit unrealistic. Like you can be walking past a building and then hear someone walking around inside the building. That seems a little bit strange right now. But it does mean that you don't often get taken by surprise. So normally when you're in a fight, both teams know that the other team are there and you're using cover, using abilities and stuff to fight each other. It all seems pretty cool. And there's an interesting thing where if you get shot, your armor can degrade, and if you want to repair your armor, it kind of shortens the health pool that armor has in future. So you can keep repairing armor, but it will get worse and worse and worse. And when you're in a game and you get hit, you get all sorts of health conditions like you do in something like Grey Zone Warfare. It's not as complex as that. Normally it's just like you're bleeding or you need a surgery tool or something like that. But it means after you've taken a few bullets, you can't just, press one button to heal. You kind of need to either temporarily press one button to heal, and it will suggest the best thing to heal you for right now. But then you really need to go into your menu and work out, okay, I'm bleeding, I need to put a tourniquet on, or okay, I've got a bullet lodged in my stomach or something, I need to do a surgery kit or something like that. I think that's a bit more interesting. It means that sometimes, you want to kind of find a little bit of cover, bunker down, maybe put some smoke grenades or something like that down, and properly try and heal up before you re-engage. And obviously, if you're doing that in a gunfight, it's quite exciting for the other team to be like, oh, I think they're healing up. I'm going to try and flank them. I'm going to move around. It leads to this kind of like ebb and flow of combat, which I really like. And I don't think you get that much in Call of Duty. Normally in Call of Duty, a fight is just two teams hit together and one team wins. I really like it when there's a bit of back and forth, and the healing mechanics being a bit slower seem to really do that. I think the fights in it have been really fun so far. Oh wait, I meant to be being negative. Sorry, I'll go back to being negative now. The economy's all over the place. There's some really weird stuff. Like I said earlier, a foregrip can be worth 71,000 credits, and then sometimes you'll get a massive, rare piece of loot, and it's only worth like 400 credits. No, nothing like that. Like 4,000 credits or something. Sometimes you'll complete missions that look quite hard and you'll get 10,000 credits. And then other times you'll pick up stuff that's worth hundreds of thousands of credits for seemingly no reason. Often when you're opening boxes, you'll open up a completely innocuous box, or you'll kill an AI and search them, and you'll find some super expensive loot that kind of makes all the missions you're trying to do seem a bit worthless. I think they just need to tweak stuff. They just need to make it so like if you kill normal AI or you're opening normal boxes, you're not going to find anything really good. If you open up safes, there should always be something good in them. Or if you're killing a high-level enemy or something, it should always have something good. I think there's a bit of that going on now, but it just doesn't work that well. So hopefully they'll improve that over time. Another thing that's a little bit weird to do with the movement is that there's some weirdness to do with what you can climb on and what you can't. So you can mantle in the game up to something that's about waist high, and sometimes it'll let you climb up onto like a box or something, but I think there's a bunch of invisible walls. There's like some barriers that it just doesn't want you to climb over. So even if it looks like you should be able to reach it, it won't let you, and you can't do that thing that you can do in Call of Duty, where you kind of jump up to something that's at like head height and then clamber on there. It won't let you do that. Kind of wish it did, especially because the game feels a bit more arcadey. It just sometimes feels a bit limited in terms of how you can flank enemies when there's like big boxes or fences and stuff that it looks like you should be able to climb over to take an interesting route, but instead the developers have just said no. Maybe it's about map design and stuff. Maybe it's about channeling these kind of fights. It does feel like the maps are very tightly controlled, where every single area they've thought about making sure, okay, there's only 3 access points to this, there's 1 point of elevation. They've tried to make them interesting areas to fight in, and maybe that's why you can't climb everywhere. But right now it just feels a bit weirdly limiting. And then finally, for the cons list of this, for the negative things about this, I'm not sure about the system where you're unrevivable if you die twice. So right now in the game, if you go down, so you're crawling around, your teammates can revive you. That's absolutely fine. You can do that as many times as you want. If you fully die, so you get taken out of a headshot, or when you're crawling around, the enemies shoot you, you can get revived once. So players can come and revive you, but there still is a timer. It's not like DMZ where, they could come back 10 minutes later to get you. They have to get you within, it's probably about I'd say 3 or 4 minutes that they have to come and get you. And if you die then, you're just out of the game. You cannot be revived. And if you go down like that twice, on a second time, you're out of the game. You can't be revived again. So it does make it a little bit scarier, but I used to quite like it in DMZ, where sometimes you'd be in a big fight and it would go on for absolutely ages, but then at the very end, if one person managed to clutch it up, they could go around and revive the rest of their team. And I always thought that was quite good. Or sometimes, you'd leave someone on your team who got killed, but then you'd be able to like circle back around after the enemies have moved on, and you'd be able to go revive them. Obviously their stuff was taken, but you could at least go revive them and keep them in the game. I kind of preferred that. I don't like the idea that it would be quite easy to just get fully knocked out of a game in this while the rest of your team are still playing. That kind of sucks. It's something that used to be a big feature in multiplayer first-person shooters, like around the time of like DayZ and PUBG and things like that. And it always used to suck, or Blackout. It always used to suck when you're playing with your friends and then one person gets fully killed and they just have to wait like 20 minutes for the rest of you. That's not a lot of fun. I always like it if there's a chance for you to bring someone back as long as one of you is alive. I would rather they did it like that. But anyway, those are the cons. And like I said, all of those are quite minor things, really. They're all things that could easily change. They might even change during the technical test or in time for the alpha next week. I've got no idea. They seem to be updating it pretty frequently. And the good news is that the core of this game is super solid. Like, it feels really, really fun to play. I think there's an interesting progression system. It looks pretty good. It runs well. I haven't really talked about all that sort of stuff, but I think it's a pretty good looking game. I haven't had any real problems with like performance or crashes or anything like that. So yeah, I'm really optimistic about this. I'm super excited to play some more over the next week. I'll be streaming some more right here and over on Twitch, twitch.tv/geekypastimes. And then next week from the 18th, I'll be able to stream it on Twitch and give you Twitch drops where you'll be able to get access to the beta for yourself. So make sure you follow me over there so you can get those Twitch drops. But yeah, the game's been great. Let me know what you think of it in the comments. And if you have any questions about the game or any aspects of it you'd like me to make a video about over the next week while only a few people can play it, let me know in the comments below and I'll do my best to get those videos made. So thank you very much for watching and goodbye.